Utah. One player left to go, and that is Trey Alexander from Creighton, a guy, again, whose name was in the draft last season and I thought was a chance to maybe go late in the first round. And as happens a lot of times, I feel, maybe this is probably completely anecdotal, but I do feel a lot of times that these guys go back to school and they hope they're going to come out and improve their stock and really jump up. And I just have heard nothing about Trey Alexander this season at all. Like, no buzz, no noise, no nothing. He's just disappeared, where he could have been a first-round pick maybe last season, or at least a top 40 pick, I would say. And I've just heard nothing. Now, is that just me being, I guess, out of that deep college basketball circle? But I've heard nothing from this guy. 21 years of age, 6'4", wing guard, played a ton of minutes, shot some threes, good from the line, decently efficient. Like, the numbers are fine. 5 assists per 40 is definitely a bit eye-opening. But what was his season like compared to what he was the year before?
Well, the difference between this year and last year, statistically, it won't jump out to you, is last year there was a point guard by the name of Ryan Nembhard at Creighton on the Elite Eight team. He transferred to Gonzaga. So even though you're going to see Trey Alexander listed as a shooting guard, he was the point guard at Creighton this past year. And so the difference he was trying to prove to scouts is that he could play as a kind of a larger point guard as opposed to an adequately sized 2 guard. And I think there was mixed results. I think that Creighton didn't have the same level of talent this year, but when they were clicking as best as they could with what I would deem as an inferior talented team as compared to the year prior, he was kind of the reason for it. He was the catalyst. He could hit score in the mid-range, create for others, learn to play pick and roll very well with Ryan Kalkbrenner, who was the center for Creighton. Baylor Shireman was on the team. He was probably the best player on that team, was a third-team All-American and first-team All-Big East performer. And he learned to feed those type of players along with the 2 starters that joined the lineup, along with the trio of veterans there due to the departures of Arthur Kaluma and Ryan Nembhard. And I would say there's mixed results as a point guard, but I would say the fact that he was able to lead his team to a 3 seed, a Sweet 16 as a point guard, proved that he's capable in that regard. I think he's really good at getting into the middle and shooting mid-range jump shots, creating for himself. Defensively, he has a 6'10" wingspan, can guard 1 through 3, I think. I would be more confident 1 and 2s, but he's got the size to guard a 3. And he took and made a lot of tough shots, both big-time shots. Sometimes his numbers, I think, in terms of percentages are going to look worse, even though they still look fine, than the level of shooter that he is. I don't think he's a great catch and shoot guy, but he's got the capacity to make tough shots, which means he has the capacity to make easy ones. So I'm actually probably higher in the consensus on Alexander because there's a lot of context that I don't think a lot of people appreciate with him and the changes of his game. But I think if you put him as a 1 or a 2, I think he's got a pathway towards success.
He was a guy I was pretty interested in last season. I thought he was a nice little late riser as an interesting sort of shooting player. I didn't really think much about the point guard stuff. Obviously, that's what he transitioned towards this season. And sometimes, even if that's not what ends up being the player's position, having that year of experience doing that can be really helpful in terms of just developing secondary skills. And if I go back to that advanced player comp thing, the 2 guys who came out as the highest comps were a guy in this draft class, Bub Carrington, but also after that, Chris Middleton, Ty Washington, Kobe White. These guys who are sort of, Middleton's the secondary ball handler for the Bucks for plenty of the time that he's been there. Kobe White has played some shooting guard and point guard, obviously plays next to Zach LaVine, plays next to other guards. You've got Ty Washington, who's played the sort of combo guard role at Kentucky as well. So those are names that are all like, there's a little bit of interestingness regarding a bunch of different advanced stats for what those guys did in college. So he's not super old. He's 21. I think I would like it if he was just a little bit taller. But the way I look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Leaf, I see his game as being moldable, but also scalable. Like, you need to do more. You need to do less. Can you go and do this today? Can you go and shoot? Can you go and pass? Can you go and distribute? Can you go and defend? Can you go and do this? Just filling in little bits and pieces and bits of gaps. And if you focus on one thing, you become really good at it for a couple of years. And if you need me to do something else, I'll do that. That's sort of how I viewed him a bit last year. I view him more of that this way, just the ability to sort of adjust to what a team needs. He's never going to be this, the best or second best player on an NBA team. Like, he's not going to be that guy. But as a valuable role player, I think that he's got that ability, I think, to just do a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I like that because I think at various points of his career where people have been the highest on him, it's been when he's taken on a new challenge. Like last year, he was the scorer for an Elite Eight team. This year, he's the point guard, and when they played their best, he was getting others involved. His freshman year, if you really want to go back all the way, Ryan Nembhard broke his wrist, and as a freshman, he played the team Kansas that won it all with Ochai Agbaji, Christian Brown, some veteran wings, and he had them within a 2-point game with 2 minutes left as a freshman playing point guard when he's played two guard all year. So I really think he's got this variability to his game. He can do enough of the different things well. And this just popped in my head. I've never thought of this before, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of what Nickeil Alexander-Walker was coming out of Virginia Tech.
Yep, I can see that. Alexander Walker's been
I really
like
Nickeil Alexander-Walker with the Utah Jazz. So now he's becoming a very valuable NBA player, and I'm not saying that Trey Alexander's exactly the same, but they remind me of one another.
Alexander Walker's a really interesting player because you don't see what he did or what he has done happen very often. A guy that comes in as this tall point guard who's like, bro, can you stop taking a million bad shots? Like, what is going on? Why is this high usage guy? I'm not sure he's ever going to get it. The shot's not there. He's going, all right, screw that. Now I'm just going to become a unbelievable perimeter defender. It's like shooting, like, don't worry about it anymore. I'm not going to do that. It's just a wild change, but that's, again, the thing that we talk about. Like, what do you need at the moment? What can you work on next? Like, you want me to do this? Right, I gotcha. I'm going to figure that out. And that's, again, the sort of thing I see there. Now, yeah, is there... I'm always big on this unconscious bias stuff, Leaf, and I have it. Like, initially when I was looking at Trey Alexander last season, I go, Trey, can you shoot like Trey Murphy? Because I hear the name. And then I see Alexander Walker. Is there an unconscious thing that jumps in there as well? But who cares? In the end, if he's able to transition and do all these different things, I think it's going to be really interesting. So he's someone I am, again, in a class like this, his ability to... I don't say he's got no weaknesses, but his weaknesses seem less pronounced than a bunch of other players that are going to go higher than him.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. There are deficiencies to his game, but they're not like absolute, like pummels your career trajectory type of deficiencies. And I even felt that way about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Just a short aside, when he was with the Jazz, he was shooting poorly, but there was a lot of internal discussion between, media members and probably a discussion as well, which player is more valuable, he or Talen Horton-Tucker to keep for the long run. And I was firmly on Nickeil Alexander-Walker's side because, well, you know what? If Talen Horton-Tucker is going to ever pan out, which personally I don't think he will, it means that he's going to have the ball. And no team's going to be good if he has to have the ball. Whereas Nickeil Alexander-Walker will defend, he'll pass, and if his shot comes around, which it has even a little bit for Minnesota, he's a valuable player. And so I didn't expect him to take this leap that he's taken, but I think Trey Alexander has similar qualities that I think he's a better, more natural scorer. Defensively, he can figure out ways to impact the game. And that's just enough. 3 years of high-level college basketball of figuring it out in different roles means something to me.
Yeah, we had a running joke on this show that every time that Talen Horton-Tucker didn't play, the Jazz would win. And I think that's as much as we need to say about where I view him as a player in the NBA long term, or even in the very, very short term, Leaf. But today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. With BetterHelp, it's therapy, but we all know that there are certain different things that therapy can be useful for. We have different stresses in our life, big or small. It might be something that happens with our sport team. It might be our team's GM taking Davion Mitchell in the top 10 of a draft when he was already 35 years of age and couldn't shoot. Who knows? Things can get to us at any point. And finding an unbiased way to get things off our chest, well, that's part of what therapy can do. It's a safe space to get those things out and figure out a way to work through whatever it is that is weighing you down. So if you've been thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You fill out a questionnaire, they match you with a therapist. If that doesn't work out and you don't like your therapist, which honestly happens all the time, you just request a new one and they change it over for you free of charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.